All right, let's talk about something every senior architect eventually runs into, orchestrating a really complex cloud migration. We're going to go way beyond a simple lift and shift here. We're talking about real strategy, gaining control, and actually delivering business value right from the get-go.
So picture this. You're staring at a portfolio with, say, 200 applications. The business is clear. They want them in the cloud, and the pressure is definitely on you. And the big question, the one that always comes up is, where do you even begin? It can feel, well, totally overwhelming, almost impossible.
So how do we tackle a beast like that? Well, in this explainer, we're going to build out a really clear, structured plan. First, we'll get into the whole art of orchestration. Then, we'll define what migration waves actually are and figure out our critical first moves. After that, we'll talk about the governance you need to keep it all on track. And finally, we'll pull everything together into what I call a living roadmap. Sound good? Let's dive in. Okay, first up, orchestrating your move. The goal here is pretty straightforward, really. It's about taking that potential chaos and turning it into controlled, strategic execution. When you think about the actual move, you've basically got two main paths. The first is what we call the Big Bang migration, where you try to move everything all at once. This is just incredibly high risk. It usually needs a huge outage window, and if something goes wrong, oh man, a rollback is a total nightmare. The much smarter approach, and what we're focusing on today, is wave planning. It's iterative. You group your apps into these manageable chunks, and that just dramatically lowers your risk and keeps business disruption to a minimum. Okay, so if wave planning is the way to go, what exactly is a wave? Let's break it down and get into the art of grouping things strategically. So, at its heart, a migration wave is really just a group of applications and all their supporting infrastructure that you decide to move to the cloud together as one unit. A good way to think of it is like a mini project inside the giant migration program. It has its own clear start, its own end, and its own set of goals. All right, so how do you actually create these groups? Well, there are four key things you got to look at. First, technical dependencies. Which apps and databases are talking to each other. You can't just rip them apart. Second, business value. Which applications are absolutely critical to the company? Third, risk and complexity. Which ones are just going to be a real headache to move? And finally, you have to consider your team's skill sets. Are they even ready for the tech stack you're moving to? Let's make this a little more real. Here's a simplified application portfolio that we're going to use for our examples. You can see we've got an auth service with 0 dependencies, a reporting tool that's tied to one database, a critical customer portal with a bunch of dependencies, and so on. Just notice the mix of risk levels and business value here. This is the kind of raw data we're going to use to build out our strategic plan. Okay, now for the really practical part. Let's actually plan our first two strategic moves, the super important Wave 0 and Wave 1. Think of Wave 0 as your pathfinder. The goal here is not about getting big, flashy wins. Nope, it is all about learning. You want to validate your process, your tools, your team's assumptions, all in a really low-stakes environment. So the key, the most crucial thing, is to pick applications that are low risk, have low complexity, and have basically 0 external dependencies. So if we look back at our portfolio, the auth service and the reporting tool, they are absolutely perfect for Wave 0. The auth service has no dependencies at all, and the reporting tool only has one. They're both low risk. Moving these first is going to teach your team so many valuable lessons about the new cloud environment, all without putting any critical business stuff in danger. This is how you build momentum and, just as important, confidence. Okay, so we've learned our lessons in Wave 0. Now, Wave 1 is all about delivering real value. The goal here shifts. You want to demonstrate a tangible business impact, and you want to do it early. So you're looking for an application that has high, maybe even critical business value, but still has manageable dependencies. This is your secret weapon for getting and keeping your stakeholders bought in for the long haul. For our example, the finance ledger is the perfect candidate for Wave 1. Look, it's rated critical to the business, which is great. But its dependency on DB Alpha, that's something our team already got familiar with when they moved the reporting tool back in Wave 0. See how that works? Moving this successfully gives you a quick, meaningful return on investment and proves the value of the whole program. Now, this is absolutely critical to remember. Wave planning does not happen in a vacuum. It has to be perfectly synchronized with other things that are going on. So as you're planning your waves, your platform team has to be rolling out the right landing zones to receive them. And at the exact same time, you've got to be enabling your teams with just-in-time training, so they're actually ready to support each wave as it goes live. A great plan is one thing, but execution, that's everything. So let's move on and talk about building a governance model that actually enables speed while preventing those costly mistakes. So, to keep a complex plan like this on the rails, you need a few core things in place. First, a migration steering committee. This should be made up of key leaders from both business and IT who can make the big decisions. Next, you need a super clear change control process, because things are definitely going to need to shift. A regular schedule of review meetings is also a must to track progress. And maybe most important of all, you need clearly defined go/no-go criteria before you launch a single wave. And I love this quote because it sums up the point perfectly. Good governance doesn't slow you down. It prevents you from going in the wrong direction fast. It's not about bureaucracy. It's about putting up guardrails to make sure you stay aligned with the big picture goals of the migration. All right, let's get to our final section and see how all of this comes together into the ultimate deliverable, the living roadmap. This is going to be your #1 communication tool for every single stakeholder. Okay, if you remember one thing about your roadmap, make it this. It is not a static document that you create once and then just file away. No way. It's a living, breathing communication tool. With every single wave you complete, you're going to learn something new. And that new information absolutely has to, be fed back into the plan to update and refine the roadmap for all the waves to come. And here's what it can look like when you put it all together. It's a simple, high-level roadmap that anyone from an engineer to the CEO can understand. You see here in Q1, we're tackling Wave 0 and getting the landing zones ready. Then in Q2, we deliver that big win with the finance ledger in Wave 1. This kind of timeline clearly communicates your plan, your priorities, and how you're tracking over time.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question to think about for your own projects. Take a look at your migration roadmap. Is it just a technical timeline of tasks? Or is it what it really should be? A continuous, strategic conversation with your business? Because honestly, the difference between those two, well, it's everything.